Let's go Broncos! I have to be honest with you, something feels very different about this Broncos team right now. And no, I'm not talking about hype. Every offseason has hype. Every year fans are told to believe. Every year people convince themselves that this is finally the roster that can take the next step. But this offseason feels different for another reason. For the first time in a long time, the biggest questions surrounding the Broncos are not about whether the team has enough talent. The biggest questions are about which talented players might not even have room on the roster. Think about that for a moment. As OTAs begin, there are trade rumors swirling around multiple positions. There are major battles developing in the secondary. The wide receiver room is suddenly crowded with talent. The tight end competition might be one of the most fascinating in the entire NFL, and perhaps most importantly, we are about to discover what this offense really looks like with Davis Webb taking over play calling duties. And here's what has me extremely curious. What if the biggest story of this offseason isn't the one everybody is talking about? What if the player who ends up changing everything isn't currently getting the headlines? What if one position battle completely reshapes the roster before the regular season even begins? Because the clues are already there, and as practices start, we're finally going to get some answers. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you hit that like button if you truly believe the Broncos are heading in the right direction. And if you're optimistic about what this team can accomplish this season, I want you to leave this comment right now. Go Broncos! The best is yet to come. I'm seeing more reasons for optimism than concerns at this point, and after what I've been hearing and watching develop around this team, there are several storylines that Broncos country absolutely cannot afford to ignore. Now let's get straight into the biggest developments. One of the most important subjects being discussed is the offensive side of the ball. Sean Payton has handed play-calling duties to Davis Webb, and that alone has created enormous curiosity around what fans could see once practices begin. There are reports and discussions suggesting that the offense could look significantly different from what many have become accustomed to seeing. There is speculation that the system could be simplified and potentially feature concepts that create a much different rhythm compared to previous approaches. The biggest question is simple: how much influence will Davis Webb truly have? Will this feel like a new offensive identity, or will it largely resemble the familiar structure with only a few adjustments? That is one of the first things everyone will be watching closely as practices unfold. Another major storyline revolves around the surprising number of trade rumors connected to the roster. What makes these rumors especially interesting is that many of them involve discussions about future draft compensation rather than players who could immediately help the Broncos. Among the names being mentioned are Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillian. The conversations surrounding those possibilities become even more intriguing when looking at the development of Jahdae Barron. If Barron quickly establishes himself in a major role, either opposite Pat Certain or as a key contributor in the slot, then some of these rumors may gain additional attention. However, if that separation does not become obvious, it becomes much harder to imagine moving away from proven contributors in the secondary. OTAs could provide some of the earliest clues about how the coaching staff views those roles. The wide receiver room is creating its own fascinating set of questions. There has been discussion about Marvin Mims, something that many observers strongly oppose. At the same time, the arrival of Jalen Waddle has dramatically increased interest in how the entire receiving corps could function moving forward. There is excitement surrounding what additional attention from defenses toward Waddle might mean for other receivers on the roster. Players such as Marvin Mims, Courtland Sutton, and Pat Bryant could potentially benefit from that situation. Observers will be watching closely to see which players are receiving certain assignments, which route concepts are being emphasized, and whether younger receivers are taking meaningful steps forward within the offense. However, there may not be a more intriguing position group than the tight ends. This room suddenly feels loaded with storylines. The Broncos added Bentley and Joe Lee through the draft, creating immediate competition. At the same time, Caleb Lohner continues generating attention because of the praise he has received. Then there is Evan Engram, whose connection with Davis Webb has become a notable talking point. When you combine those names with the existing competition already present in the room, it creates one of the deepest and most interesting battles on the entire roster. Every practice rep could matter because there are only so many opportunities available. Then there's perhaps the most discussed topic of all, Bo Nix. The expectation coming from the information currently circulating is that Nix is progressing well and could be back throwing passes very soon. Observations, comments, and public indications have all contributed to growing confidence surrounding his status. Because of that, attention is beginning to shift away from concerns and toward preparation. Everyone wants to see how he looks once practice activity increases and whether he appears fully comfortable moving around and operating the offense. At the same time, another challenge is beginning to emerge. Roster construction may become one of the toughest decisions facing the organization. There are discussions about how many running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and outside linebackers can realistically fit onto the final roster. The concern is no longer a lack of talent. Instead, the concern is whether there are too many deserving players competing for limited spots. That creates difficult choices and raises the possibility that quality contributors could ultimately find opportunities elsewhere simply because there is not enough room available. The result is an offseason that feels dramatically different from previous years. Questions about Davis Webb's influence, the future of certain defensive backs, the crowded receiver room, the loaded tight end competition, Bo Nix's progress, and the coming roster decisions have all converged at the same time. That is why OTAs suddenly feel far more important than many expected just a few weeks ago. Every practice could provide another clue about where this team is headed and which players are positioning themselves for major roles moving forward. The roster battle may actually become the hidden story that determines everything moving forward, because when you look at the names being discussed throughout the roster, it becomes clear that the Broncos are approaching a situation that coaching staffs actually hate dealing with. Not because there is a lack of talent, but because there may be too much competition for too few spots. And that changes the entire dynamic of training camp and the weeks that follow. Think about what is being discussed right now. There are questions at wide receiver. There are questions at cornerback. There are questions at tight end. There are questions regarding how many running backs can realistically make the roster. Every one of those position groups has multiple players fighting for opportunities, and every strong performance by one player creates pressure on another player trying to secure his place on the team. That is why the upcoming practices become so important. Every rep matters. Every route matters. Every coverage assignment matters. Every opportunity to stand out becomes magnified because coaches are not simply evaluating who can play. They are evaluating who deserves one of a limited number of roster spots. The cornerback situation is a perfect example. The development of Jahdae Barron could have ripple effects throughout the entire secondary. If he immediately looks comfortable and dominant in a major role, then discussions about other defensive backs naturally become more serious. Coaches will be watching where he lines up, how often he is used, and whether he can consistently handle the responsibilities being asked of him. Those details may seem small during OTA practices, but they can eventually influence much larger roster decisions. The same applies to the wide receiver room. The arrival of Jalen Waddle has created excitement because of the attention he could attract from opposing defenses. But beyond that excitement lies another reality. Somebody has to earn targets. Somebody has to earn snaps. Somebody has to prove that they deserve to be on the field when meaningful games begin. The competition level inside that room could become one of the most intense battles on the entire roster. Then you move over to the tight end group, and the competition becomes even more fascinating. Evan Ingram brings experience and familiarity with Davis Webb. The rookies arrive with something to prove. Caleb Lohner continues generating attention because of the praise surrounding his development. When multiple players are fighting for opportunities in the same room, every practice becomes a showcase. Every catch, every block, every assignment completed correctly can separate one player from another. And while all of those position battles are unfolding, another major question remains in the background. What exactly will this offense look like under Davis Webb's influence? That may be the storyline that connects everything together. If the offensive structure changes, even slightly, that could impact which receivers thrive, which tight ends become featured options,